Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, now part of the Work Defined Podcast Network. Join us as we explore the vital role of compensation, strategy, data, and people analytics in navigating today's complex business world. With the resources of Work Defined, we're bringing you deeper insights and actionable ideas from top HR experts. Now, here are your hosts, David Turetsky and Dwight Brown. Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky, alongside my co-host, best friend, actually, partner in crime from Salary.com, Dwight Brown. Dwight Brown, how are you?
David Turetsky, I am wonderful today. How are you doing?
You are wonderful. Wow. I'm not wonderful. I'm okay. But today, we have with us a fellow geek, a fellow professed geek, Neil Thompson. Neil, how are you?
I'm well. How are you both?
We're very good. We're very good.
Well,
Neil, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Teach the Geek?
Sure. Teach the Geek started based on my struggles giving presentations in front of management when I worked as an engineer. With my first job, I worked as a research associate. There wasn't a whole lot of speaking that was involved. I worked in a lab mostly, and I did a lot of doing experiments, writing protocols, writing reports, that type of thing. Anything that I generated, I passed along to my boss, and he was the one that was responsible for basically sharing that with other people. And I didn't mind that arrangement at all. It actually wasn't until my second job, working as a product development engineer at a medical device company, did speaking come to something I had to do. And even when I first started the job, I didn't realize that would be the case. It was a few months into the job that my boss called me into his office and said that I was going to be a project lead. And essentially, a project lead is someone who has project manager responsibilities without the title. So one of those responsibilities was giving presentations in front of senior management on a monthly basis. And those first few presentations that I gave were rough at best, we'll say.
Yeah.
The amount of sweat that can pour from one's body it's rather amazing when you think of it, when it's actually happening in real time. And you would have thought that I had gotten better after the first presentation, and I knew that I wasn't doing all that well, because a lot of the questions that I got after the presentation during the Q&A part, I thought I had answered during the presentation, but apparently I didn't do such a great job of putting things in a way that these typically non-technical senior management types could understand. I didn't learn my lesson after that first presentation, or the second, or the third, or the fourth. Actually, my project got canceled. And once that happened, I thought, this whole presenting in front of people thing, maybe this is something I need to get better at. And the first thing I did was actually sit in on some of the other presentations that some of the other engineers did, because they were project leads too. And that's where I realized I wasn't alone. Their presentations weren't all that much better than mine. But so I definitely saw the benefit of getting better at it. And my project getting canceled was definitely the wake-up call. The next thing I did was I joined Toastmasters. For those of you all that don't know, it's an international organization with chapters all over the world with a goal of helping people improve their public speaking. And that definitely helped a lot. And instead of kind of not looking for opportunities to give presentations in front of others, now I look for them because I saw the benefit of doing so. So with Teach the Geek, essentially what it is me as a technical person helping other technical people with their presentation skills, so perhaps their projects don't get canceled.
That's called the survival instinct, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, who knows if my project hadn't gotten canceled, if I would have gotten the hint at some point. I would hope so. Yeah. But I suppose we'll never know. This is over 15 years ago now, and I still think about it.
There you go.
I can see it. Yeah. They don't exactly teach you that in engineering school either. That's not a class that's taught.
Although now with Agile methodology, there's the stand up, and every day engineers are being asked to provide input and to speak in front of others. So I think that's got to be a skill that engineers and developers get better at. But Neil, before we get into your topic, we always ask, what's one fun thing that no one knows about Neil Thompson?
One fun thing that people don't know about me. I'm not sure this is fun, but it definitely is true. I don't like black licorice.
Oh.
I hate licorice. I'm with you.
I love licorice.
Ugh, it's that taste.
Yeah. I don't like black licorice, but I do like black jelly beans.
Well,
really?
It's different. It's a different, I think it's actually a different candy.
Is it because of the texture, you think, or?
Oh, no, I think it may also stem from my childhood too. My older sister, she loved licorice. And maybe I decided to not like licorice so she could have all the licorice. And she let me have all the jelly beans.
Did she slap you with it? Or?
No, not like she didn't slap me with the licorice. What she used to do back when I was a kid, and I still remember this to this day, in the basement, there was the hot water heater, and she would hide behind it. And whenever I'd pass, she'd jump out behind it and scare me.
So you'd slap her with the black licorice.
I would have done that. Yeah, at least.
To this day, I'm easily scared.
Yeah.
Very skittish.
Yeah. Don't watch the Blair Witch Project then.
Yeah.
Definitely don't watch Blair Witch, because there's a lot of basement shenanigans that goes on in that you don't want to see.
And you know what's so funny about that? I mean, she's married with a kid now, and she does that to her son and her husband.
Oh no.
Oh
no. No.
Yeah, she thinks it's hilarious.
Wow.
Well, hopefully her husband does, or she's gonna be single soon. So.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been married over 20 years now, so I guess he's adapted.
Yeah, I'm sure he has. He's developed a thick skin, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So Neil, before we transition, I want to tell you that you're amongst good company here. We're all geeks. So I am very interested in hearing your story about this topic. The topic is developing speaker training programs for technical staff. As I said before, I'm an artifact of the Agile methodology. So I'm very interested to hear your story.
Hey friends, Marnie Robbins here, host of Vibe Makers, a podcast now on the Work Defined Network. Look, we all know workplace culture doesn't come from a slide deck. Gross. It comes from people. So on Vibe Makers, I talk to the folks shaping the experience of work from the inside out. You know, the HR and people ops folk, founders, leaders, and misfits building culture through small bets, big beliefs, and a whole lot of trial and error. No fluff. Well, maybe a little fluff, but mainly just candid talk about what happens when you stop duct taping your culture together. Come check us out. Listen to Vibe Makers wherever you get your podcasts.
Neil, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to this line of work. And I think we heard about it a little bit in your preamble during our getting to know you part. But tell us why this is so important.
Well, I mean, it's important because I saw the benefit of getting better at speaking in front of others in myself. And I didn't want people to have to go through what I went through if they've gone through it at all. And if they have, then I would hope I could offer some suggestions and recommendations so they don't have to go through it anymore. I mean, a lot of times, technical people, we think that us being excellent at our jobs is good enough. And unfortunately, that's not the case. If you're not good at advocating for yourself, you're not good at communicating your work to an organization, you get overlooked. You'll be that technical person who thought they deserved the promotion, thought it deserved the pay raise, but they didn't get it because someone else who was more vocal did. And I don't want other people to be like me, essentially. I was that person. So if I could help others not be in that position, I'm all for that.
And I'm sure that the brilliance that you have, the real understanding of the technical matters, because you have all that upstairs, and being able to organize that in a way that makes sense to others. That is a very important skill, not just to you, but also to the people around you, and communicating that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, who do you want communicating that information? The person who has it, or someone that has to learn it from the person who has it? It's kind of like a game of broken telephones. A lot of things get probably miscommunicated in that exchange. So if the person who has that expertise is able to communicate it in such a way that non-technical people can understand, I think that's the best option.
And that's the hard part is, learning your audience, knowing your audience, knowing what their hot buttons are going to be, how to communicate around those hot buttons. Yeah, that's a hard skill. And you're so right. Who do you want to give the presentation? The person who knows it, or the person who had to get a briefing on it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it was last summer. I attended a technical conference, and one of the presentations was given by a business development person. And this was mostly technical people, engineers in the audience. After the presentation, the business development person got a whole lot of technical questions that he couldn't answer. And I felt kind of bad for him. Luckily, there were 2 engineers from his company in the audience, and they answered the questions from their seats. The room was small enough that we could hear their answers. And I just remember thinking, why didn't one of them give the presentation? It's a technical conference. It's mostly technical people in the audience. So it would have made sense for one of them to give the presentation and not the business development person. But yet here's this business development person sweating bullets like I used to when I had to give presentations and not being able to answer questions that all these people are asking. And there's 2 people who that could answer those questions, and they're sitting comfortably in their seats.
Right.
But I think it also comes back to that being a part of the business development person's, not just personality, but their responsibilities, right? Their duties. Being able to present to a wide audience. Now, they might not have known that the audience was technical in nature, and if they did, they definitely chose the wrong people to present it. But typically, when I've gone to conferences, it hasn't been the product developer who's given the presentation. It's usually the product manager who gives the requirements, or it's the marketing people behind the product who should know the product well enough, but not the technical side. So a little bit of this has to come down to duties and responsibilities. But to the other point, it is definitely a skill. And I've presented in front of very, very large audiences in the past. And I have a really good background in both the technology as well as the product management, but I'm a product manager. I'm not a developer. And so while I'm a geek, most of the time I've been doing solutions engineering, trying to figure out how a technology can help solve a business problem more so than the, developing of the application itself.
Yeah, I certainly take that point. And it actually reminds me of a conversation I once had, this was a number of years ago, and we're with a project manager. And the project manager was of the opinion that if you're going to be a project manager, you have to have some technical expertise as well, just be able to communicate with the technical people. Although a few years ago, I got my PMP certification, and I did a boot camp in order to prepare for the PMP exam. And one of the instructors said that once you get your PMP, you should be able to manage any project, no matter what industry it's in, which kind of contradicts what the other person I had the conversation said, saying that you need to have some technical ability or expertise to be able to manage more technical projects. So I certainly can see the issue in not having that background and being asked to give presentations in front of technical people and struggling at it.
Well, it's always the communication piece that makes or breaks a project, because you have so many stakeholders, you have so many people involved in it and you're constantly having to shift the way that you do the communication.
Yeah.
I mean, with the key stakeholders, it is oftentimes those formal presentations, but you think about the informal presentations that you make along the way too. And if you're not effective at the formal ones, the likelihood that you're going to be effective at the informal ones is less too.
Yeah.
Right.
Communication is hard because you have the person who's communicating and they have their intent. And then you have the people who are receiving the information and they have their understanding of what the person said. And you're trying to make sure that gap is as small as possible. And then if you have someone who has to provide technical information to someone who's non-technical, well, being mindful of that gap is even more important.
Enjoying the conversation? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode packed with insights and strategies. Now, let's dive back in. So let's transition to that, which is because we've talked about how non-technical presenters can or do fail when they're presenting to technical people. Let's talk about what the challenges are specifically for technical people to present to non-technical people.
I think a big challenge many of us have is empathy. We weren't always technical people. Likely we went to school, studied something technical, and then took on a technical role. And then we just think that everyone else should understand what we understand because we understand it. But that's not always the case. Well, that's often not the case, especially if you're speaking to non-technical audiences. So I think a lot of us need to remember who we were before we were that technical person. You were a non-technical person. What kind of presentation could you have understood back then? And so when we present in front of non-technical people, why don't we harken back to that person and prepare a presentation that's more tailored to that person as opposed to the technical person that you currently are?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because I struggle with the same thing. I'm an analyst at heart, and doing the communication, it is very difficult to get yourself out of your own world, or at least for me, it's very difficult for me to get myself out of my own world to realize that the bar for the level of knowledge is a lot lower than what I have. I make a lot of assumptions that, okay, if I know it, then everybody else in the room is a lot smarter than I am, so they probably know it better than me. And I think that's a big mistake that I make along the way with those things, is really those assumptions that I draw that aren't very good assumptions.
Yeah, when I eventually started giving presentations in front of management again, one of the things that I started doing is going to their administrative assistants and asking what kind of information would your boss want to know, so that they are more engaged and would be more likely to listen to what I have to say. Because like yourself, I was also making a whole bunch of assumptions, and luckily these administrative assistants had some great insights over what I could say or do during the presentations, so that their bosses would be more likely to listen. So, I mean, just trying to get that feedback and trying not to make as many assumptions, I think could be really helpful.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely about knowing your audience and being able to cater whatever you're going to say, what your messages are to your audience. When I do speaking engagements throughout, whether it's an industry conference, whether it's a local chapter of an industry conference, whatever, even on webinars or even to the HR Data Labs podcast, what we have to do is be able to put ourselves in the shoes of those people. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to use the word lowest common denominator. It's not about speaking down to people. It's about speaking to them and being able to address the concerns they might have, or what questions would they want answers to, and being able to just change our mindset a little bit. Because, Neil, I think one of the problems is we're talking about pretty brilliant people, these technologists, right? And they're kind of thinking at a different level. So how do they change that level to match what you were talking about speaking to people in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I said. Remember what you were before you were at that top level. I mean, what could you have understood then? I mean, and also, if you are at that top level and you have all this expertise, I truly believe that those who are able to communicate to people that aren't at that level, those are the truly brilliant ones, because they know their information so well that they can communicate it to anybody, not just the people who are at the level.
Yeah, I love being able to understand or know my audience. It feels to me like I'm going to be a more understood, more effective speaker than if I go in blind, not knowing who the heck I'm talking to. So I love your idea about speaking to the administrative assistants. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't do that these days because either there aren't administrative assistants or you don't have access to people like that. And so what other ways would you be able to go to learn about your audience before you speak to them?
Well, I mean, for instance, if you're speaking at a technical conference, you could ask the conference organizers what type of people are going to be in the audience. I mean,
that's a great
if
idea.
the business development person had known that there's going to be mostly technical people there, then I'm sure he would have made sure that the engineer would have been in the audience to be able to answer those technical questions. Who knows?
Right.
Now I think about it, maybe that was the plan the whole time.
So they planted those people in the audience.
Yeah, who knows?
Always good to have backup. That's also a communication skill. Right?
That is true.
Yeah. And there's been so many other instances. For instance, I live in San Diego. There's a whole lot of pitch competitions that happen here because of the biotech industry that's pretty big here. And in so many instances, if you have a technical founder who is presenting in front of people, it's mostly non-technical people. And in the event that there are technical people in the audience, you have to figure out, well, how am I going to present to both? And I'm a big fan of kind of priming what you're going to say before you say it. So, for instance, if you're going to say something that's more technical, you could prime it by saying something like, to get into more detail.
Right.
So now when you say those words, now the technical people are going to think, okay, this is something that I want to key in on because you're talking about detail. Right. And if you're talking, if you want to prime it for the more non-technical people, you can say something like, to simplify. And then, okay, simple, I can understand simple. You've been talking a whole lot of technical stuff up until this point. Simplify, okay, I can handle the simplify.
Yeah, definitely don't say, I'm going to dumb it down now.
Yeah, exactly.
For those of you who didn't get what I just said.
For those idiots in the audience who...
Yeah. Yes. And if you didn't get what I said, here, let me give you the crib notes.
Yeah, there's so many instances, I'm sure, that technical people, I know I can speak for myself, where I've been in the audience and someone is talking about a subject that I don't know all that much about. And they're using a whole lot of technical jargon and words and concepts that I don't understand. And what could this person have done to make it so that I could be the person that could understand that presentation? But yet, then when we give our presentations, we just assume people will understand our technical jargon. It's rather hypocritical. So we don't want to be that way.
Yep.
Absolutely. So what role can HR departments play in making sure that the right people have these skills and the training necessary?
So as I mentioned earlier, when I decided I wanted to get better at giving presentations in front of others, I went to Toastmasters. But that was outside of the organization that I worked at. If an organization was more willing to offer that kind of training in-house, I think a lot more technical people would take advantage of it because it's right there. It's not something they have to seek out themselves. So what the potentially training could look like if HR were to offer it, well, firstly, they'd wanted to have conversations with the technical people to get a sense of what do they think they need to get better at. You don't want to just to develop something that the people won't end up using because they weren't involved in its creation. So just getting their feedback in what they think it should be, I think it's helpful. And from what I gathered, one of the big things that technical people want help with is balancing technical clarity or technical depth and clarity. You have all this technical information you want to get put forth, but you also want to make it so clear to the non-technical people that they fully understand that gap that I spoke about earlier is minimal as possible. So getting that feedback is helpful. And then after that, then you can figure out what the training needs to look like. In my estimation, as I mentioned earlier, training on trying to minimize minimize technical jargon is helpful. Also, training on timing, I think, could be helpful too. Sometimes we can get really caught up on what we're talking about and go over time, and people stop listening. They're already listening to this presentation that's more technical. Maybe they didn't want to be there in the first place. Now you're going over time. That's even more of a nuisance. So basically figuring out what the process is going to be for developing what the training is, and then figuring out, well, how do we know that this training is actually working? And a suggestion I have for that is having feedback questionnaires afterwards and asking specific questions like to the audience, like, was this presentation understandable? Was this presentation relevant? Questions like that, and then getting feedback from those people, and you can see that if you can see the improvement over time. Maybe you can even have a scale of 1 to 5, and if you're getting more 4s and 5s than 1s and 2s, then this is something that you're improving at.
Neil, I want to ask you a question about the engineers being able to read feedback from the audience. One of the things that I really try and do as I'm presenting is read the audience to see if they started picking up their phones. Are they falling asleep? Yes, people have fell asleep in my presentations. I'm sure everybody's had that problem. Well, maybe not. I'm a little boring. But it was a joke. I'm sorry. Terrible joke.
I've heard you speak. You're not.
Well, but I also try and do active listening to my audience, even though I'm the one presenting. Do you think, Neil, that one of the things that are one of the key skills that engineers typically don't have to work on because they usually don't have to work with other people like this is actually reading their audience and seeing, am I hitting the mark? Do I need to change? Can I be flexible during this presentation?
It certainly could be an issue, especially if you're someone who's reading slides.
Yeah.
I've gone to a lot of these conferences, and a lot of times what's happening is people are reading their slides. And if you're reading slides, then you have no clue what the audience is doing because you're not looking at them.
Right.
You don't see the fact that they're looking at their phones or falling asleep or staring off into space. So yes, certainly being able to just getting better at reading the room. And as you mentioned, being more flexible to be able to make changes on the fly. And being a member of Toastmasters is really helpful in that, actually. A part of a Toastmasters part of a Toastmasters meeting is what's called table topics. You're given a question that you didn't prepare for. And you have typically 1 to 2 minutes to answer.
Oh, I love that.
And to even up the level of difficulty, they'll ask you to use a certain word in your answer. So if you become better at just being flexible, of answering questions that you didn't know were coming, having to use a certain word, well, then giving a presentation in which you have to be more flexible becomes easier.
I got a story for you. Really funny. I used to do a lot of webinars. And one of the things that we used to do on those webinars, me and my colleagues, I forget which company this was, but they used to challenge me. And I used to say, give me 3 words that you want me to put into the presentation so that I could learn how to do this on my toes. And one of the fun things was they gave me something like mobile phlebotomy unit.
Oh, God.
Okay. Think about mobile phlebotomy for a second. Okay. Now you got to put in like the Red Cross, they do those blood drives. And so that's exactly what I did. In my mind, I did a mental model of how I would portray this mobile phlebotomy unit into my presentation. And it was so exciting, Neil. It got me so excited about the presentation that, I nailed it. I got it. And people were like, what? Where did that come from? That was a weird story, but I nailed it. And one of the things it did for me was it made me stay on my toes throughout the presentation. So I love that advice because, and you could tell I'm getting excited by it, because it made me feel like I could enjoy not just this cookie cutter presentation that had a script associated with it, but to actually on the fly be able to change my presentation and fit it in. And that was just so exciting.
Yeah. And I think I think other people that would adopt that type of mentality, I think they would find presentations to be more fun too. I mean, I think a lot of times when we have to give these presentations, we dread them and because we're worried about how we're going to be perceived. We're worried about if we're going to know everything we're supposed to know, if someone's in the audience that can possibly call us out on something we didn't know. Mm-hmm. During the Q&A, someone asked us a question that we can't answer. But if you come at it from a sense of, I'm going to have fun, I'm going to talk about mobile phlebotomy units, then maybe the presentation won't seem as dreadful as you initially thought.
Well, a lot of people have that imposter syndrome when they're presenting. Like, why would anybody listen to me? What do I have to say? And I always try and make sure that people understand they're investing an hour or half an hour of their lives listening to you. And so if they didn't believe that you could provide them with something, some nugget of truth, something that will change how they work or what they think about work or whatever, then they wouldn't have invested in you. So do your best to make sure it's as fun, entertaining, as well as insightful as possible. And, this is why Dwight and I do this podcast, because what we want to try and do is make sure that our audience, because we love our audience, that they get something insightful out of every single minute of every single episode.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what you just said, David. And, I do these presentations in front of others, and I always ask for feedback. And whenever I see in the feedback insightful, I know that I did my job, because that's ultimately that's what I'm trying to do ultimately. But I recognize that for some, perhaps that's not the goal. They want to be more, motivating or inspiring. If I'm that's cool. But if you actually got something out of what I said that perhaps you didn't think of before, and it's something that you can use, well, that was time well spent for both of us.
Well said, Neil. Yeah. And I think that's a mic drop moment right there. We appreciate you being on the HR Data Labs podcast. I hope that the geeks who, like us, who listen to this podcast will be energized by what you said to either go to teachthegeek.com or go to Toastmasters. And by the way, these aren't commercial messages.
Start their journey.
Yeah, exactly. Start their journey. Because this is a really cool journey to be a presenter. And there are so many really cool stories out there that don't get told because people don't believe they have the skill or they don't believe they have the voice to be able to tell it. So I'm so proud of you and what you're doing to help people who are more technical in nature to be able to feel that spark. That's wonderful.
Thank you. And for those who are also listening, in addition to going to teachthegeek.com, you could also go to my podcast, which is the Teach the Geek podcast, in which I interview people with technical backgrounds about their public speaking journeys. And I've even learned some things. For instance, one of my guests said that to combat nervousness, she wiggles her toes. And she says that by doing, she says like by doing so, she's focused more on the toe wiggling than on the fact that she's nervous. So if you want to check out if you want to check out the podcast, you can go to podcast.teachthegeek.com.
There you go. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Dwight.
Thank you. It's been great having you, Neil.
Same here.
And thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe. Thanks for listening to the HR Data Labs podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your network. Also, check out the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch every Friday on YouTube. Stay safe.